Well, Jesse is here, and this is a full show that we've got tonight after we missed out on yesterday. Are you ready for some rapid fire?
Let's do it. I didn't even hear what happened yesterday, but today you had Ryan Roberts, Olivia Miles, and then me.
I know.
It's a full slate.
All-star cast here tonight on the show. All right, so ESPN.com's Adam Rittenberg has Notre Dame as a dark horse national title contender heading into this season. He says, quote, "The big key is getting more from the quarterback spot in the passing game against top competition," end quote. Do you buy or sell that as Notre Dame's biggest question heading into this season?
Yeah, I 100% buy that as Notre Dame's biggest question. I feel like that's been Notre Dame's biggest deficiency over the last, 3, 4, 5 seasons is they have a defense up to the par. They have a run game and an offensive line up to the par, which they have a quarterback and a downfield threat who can get you a big play when you need it the most, right? Like Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State. I know this is like a big, comparison here, but everyone knew at times the ball was going to him and he still produced and made plays, right? Like, I'm not saying it needs to be to that degree, but it felt like last season against Ohio State, against Clemson, some of these big losses that Notre Dame had, they could have used, a quarterback wide receiver duo to really, lean on in some of those crucial moments. So I do believe if Notre Dame can clean up his quarterback and wide receiver, passing attack, they would be considered one of the most legitimate, well-rounded teams in the country.
Yeah, I think he hit it on the head. And really, when you look at, as you said, not just this season, but Notre Dame over the last few years, that has been the biggest difference. Like, you look a few years back, there was a, like, when Ian Book was here, I think it was 2018, 2019 season. The split was very obvious for Ian Book. Like, he feasted on the lesser teams on the schedule, but as the degree of difficulty went up, that's where the passing numbers, started to, get a little bit more shaky. And like, you look at Sam Hartman last year, he only completed 43% against Clemson. He completed 58% against Louisville. He was a little bit, a lot better just from a completion percentage against Ohio State. But when you combine those 3 games, he had 3 total touchdowns and 5 interceptions in those games. And then, like, you throw in the fumbles that he had against Louisville as well. But just from a pure passing standpoint, 3 interceptions, 5 interceptions, 3 touchdowns against those 3 teams, Clemson, Louisville, and Ohio State. You've got to get better. And if you flip the numbers and you win 2 of those games, you're a playoff team, most likely last year. And the playoff field is obviously expanding this year, so it's going to be a little bit easier. But I'm not going to say it doesn't matter what you do against Northern Illinois, Miami. Like, obviously, you still have to take care of business in those games. But again, the reason you went out and you got a guy like Riley Leonard from the transfer portal is and the reason that you went out and got Mike Denbrock after Jared Parker left, you've got to do better. You've got to be more consistent against the better teams on the schedule. That is obviously how you not only get to the playoff, but win playoff games and ultimately win a national championship. You got to get better at the quarterback position. That's why you got Riley Leonard this year. And I think that Rittenberg hit it on the head with this. A lot of the, national guys can miss the mark sometimes, but I think he hit it, the nail on the head. To me, that is number one. And as Joe says, the O-line is still a question, but I think
I don't. If with Notre Dame's history, I just what have we been shown that they're going to struggle figuring out putting together offensive line? Like that's
they're ultimately going to figure out the offensive line. That's what the odds say.
Yeah, right? And while it might take maybe a game or 2 at the beginning of the season, sure, but I Notre Dame's offensive line will be just fine. And kind of what you were talking about last season, what did the good teams do against Notre Dame? Louisville, Notre Dame, or Ohio State, Clemson, they loaded the box against Notre Dame and said, beat us. Your wide receivers need to beat us. And so when a team is challenging you like that, you have to have a wide receiver and a quarterback who are able to perform, really. And like you said, like, this is, if you want to change the narrative around this, you're not going to do it against, dominant performances against Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, Navy, Georgia Tech. Everyone knows that we're talking about the big games, the biggest stages, right? Like, what is your quarterback and wide receiver doing along with everything else to be a difference maker?
Agreed. So to nobody's surprise, Notre Dame's season opener at Texas A&M on August 31st is going to be in prime time, 7:30 p.m. kickoff Eastern time on ABC. Over under 4.5 other games on Notre Dame's schedule this season that will also be primetime games.
I went with the under on this one, and I think if the games that stick out to me for prime time are going to be Georgia Tech, Florida State, and then USC. So you have 3 there. I really don't see them getting any of the other games because, well, I know that the only reason I'm saying Georgia Tech is because that's going to be inside the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. USC and Florida State are the other games I anticipate to be kind of ranked versus ranked matchup. So I really only see 3 games.
Now, they haven't announced it officially, but Pete Bavacqua, in one of the interviews that he did recently, said that the Army Shamrock Series game is going to be a primetime game. Again, it's not official yet, so we don't know for sure. So that, like, I'm looking at that Georgia Tech game wondering, that's kind of a swing game for me because even when they go on the road this season, there aren't many, big prime games because just the way things shaped up, when you look at the ACC schedule, there aren't a lot of other opportunities for some primetime games like you've seen before. I do wonder, as Carberry Q says, about that Louisville game, especially
That's
if they
a swing
are.
game for sure.
Yeah. And typically, that is a home game. Typically, NBC makes its announcements before the season. But when you look at the home schedule, Florida State is the obvious one. The Army Shamrock Series game falls under the NBC contract. So that makes sense. You're doing a special game at Yankee Stadium. You're going to celebrate, the 100-year anniversary of Grantland Rice and the Four Horsemen and all those different things out there. So that makes sense. The Louisville game and that Georgia Tech game that you're talking about are kind of the swing games for me because, again, there's just not a whole lot of other opportunities to get primetime on the road other than USC. And anytime they go to the West Coast, they pretty much seem to be in primetime. So I'm going to go over. I'm going to say the temptation by Disney to give Notre Dame some kind of other primetime game is going to be too much. I'm going to go over the 4.5. Are you sitting under still?
Yes, I still believe in the under.
Okay. All right. So Jesse is going under. Michael Parks saying 4. I'm going to go over and say 5 others besides that Texas A&M game. And again, Purdue in week 3, when Notre Dame goes to West Lafayette, that's going to be a 3:30 game on CBS. We found that out today as well. CBS gobbled them up as part of their new Big Ten package. So 3:30 CBS game at Purdue. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame men's basketball getting a commitment today from 6'10" grad transfer forward Nikita Konstantynovskyi is blank.
Is a great addition to the depth along this Notre Dame basketball roster. You look at a guy like this, and he's had quite the journey. He started out in JUCO. I believe he went to another kind of smaller D1, and then he went on to Monmouth after this, and now he's ending at Notre Dame. So if my math serves me right, this might be his 4th destination. And so to start off from being a JUCO guy and then getting to finish your career at Notre Dame, I think that's tremendous, right? Like when you think of the dream, like and the ability to continue on playing basketball and that sort of thing, like imagine starting at JUCO and then ending your career at Notre Dame. And so do I think he's going to be some difference maker? No, but I think he will add key depth. And I think he is very lengthy in a Micah Shrewsbury defense. So I think that he will be used to really be an athletic big man, sort of, right? Like the ability to be a stretch 5 if they need him to step out and guard the perimeter. He's more than just a down low player. So I really enjoy his versatility for how big he is.
Yeah, stretch 5. Yeah, that's stretch 5. You don't hear stretch 5 too often, stretch 4 a little bit more. That guy's going to shoot some threes, but He has not attempted a three-pointer in his career, but you're right. From a defensive standpoint, I think he can step out and be able to do some of that. But you're right. He's well-traveled. Northeastern Oklahoma A&M Junior College for a couple of years, Tulsa for a couple of years. Had an injury that kept him out of his second year at Tulsa, so he does still have eligibility remaining after his 1 year at Monmouth. But he had nice numbers, 9.3 points, 8.3 rebounds in 23 and a half minutes. So even that, like 8.3 rebounds in 23 and a half minutes, that's a pretty healthy number right there. They needed size after Kerry Booth left.
Right.
And they got some size. And, like they're going to get a little bit of size.
It's versatile size, too.
Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right. Some versatile size. They'll get some size back with Garrett Sundra, the freshman, coming in. But freshman, what exactly you're going to get, you don't exactly know. Sir Muhammad, 6'7" guard coming in, and then Cole Serta as well. But, again, Booth left, Zona left. Those were two guys who are both in that 6'10" range. So they had to go out and get it. Keba and Tay Davis were their top two rebounders this season at 5.4 and 5.1. So if this guy, Konstantynovskyi from Kyiv, Ukraine, can go out and give them like 7.5 to 8 rebounds per game, I think that you would take that, because that was, again, when you look at 5.4 and 5.1 being your top two rebounders, they needed to go out and find someone who could go after some boards, and I think that he gives them someone who can go do that for you.
Yeah, and I mean, worst comes to worst, he's a guy that is just gonna work tremendously hard, right? Like that's already proven, getting from the JUCO all the way to Notre Dame. And so, even if he's not eating up a ton of playing minutes, like he's gonna play, but if he's not getting 20 to 30 minutes per game, he's still a guy in practice that's going to work hard and kind of push everyone else around him, right? And so I think that it's a very much a type of player that fits Micah Shrewsbury's culture, right? Like he doesn't have to kind of change who this guy is. This guy's naturally going to fit into what Shrewsbury's been trying to do in his second season.
And you've also now got native Ukrainians on both the men's and women's teams for this upcoming season. Kate Koval, who's played, I think it's the last 3 years in New York, she's originally from Ukraine, and then Konstantynovskyi also from Ukraine. So you're going to have a couple of Ukrainians for both teams over there. Little international flavor. We haven't had a lot of international in a while. So the EA Sports College Football 25 cover is out. The cover has players from all teams walking through a stadium tunnel and out onto the field. Players from Michigan, Texas, Colorado are the most prominently featured. There you go. Jesse's got the image. Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Alabama, USC, among the others that are the most visible on the cover. So what do you think of the College Football 25 cover, Jess?
I think it's a great cover for a sports game that is reintroducing itself back into the world, right? Because we talked about this. Like, who do you decide to put on the cover after being away for so long? Well, you put everyone on the cover, right? And then you make the most prominent schools, the teams that had the most recent success. And then I think in front of that is kind of the tier that you would say has been kind of the most, nationally dominant over the last 2 decades or so, right? Like Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame being those 4 kind of teams. Like if you could see my cursor on the show, this is Notre Dame over here. This is Alabama here. This is Clemson here. This is Ohio State here. Obviously, you got to have a Michigan player, front and center because they just won a national championship. Quinn Ewers is probably, one of the top rated quarterbacks, and Texas just came back from their first playoff appearance in a while. Really, the only person that doesn't fit is Travis Hunter from Colorado, but we know that because of the national attention that they get, Colorado is going to be in there somewhere.
I feel like if anything, Alabama did just go to the playoff last year, along with Texas and Michigan, who are along with Hunter. Like I do feel like Jalen Milroe and Hunter should probably be switched, if anything. And I do really? You're gonna put Colorado that prominently after the finish they had last year? That's the only thing I question is the prominence that Colorado was given on this cover. Otherwise, I love it because it includes a little bit of everybody. It's got last names on the back of the jerseys as they enter the tunnel. It's like we're all in on this thing. We're going in together. We're all a part of this game, and we'll get to the last names here in a minute. But it's like we're all in on this, and because those guys have their last names in there, they're getting the paychecks as well for the old NIL.
Yeah,
for taking part.
I had to correct myself. The team in front of Travis Hunter is actually Georgia and not Clemson. So you have Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, but still very fitting, right? Because it's like, again, you have Michigan and Texas just in the playoffs again, and the only person like you could completely do without Colorado. Like before last season, who was Colorado to college football?
Exactly. And Josh says, any truth about Deion being upset his son wasn't on the cover? Probably. I mean, I don't know. Deion's always got something to be kind of upset about, it seems like. But, I felt like when we were talking a couple of weeks ago about what the cover might look like, I said do regional covers so that you can have, like out west, you have maybe a USC guy on the cover or an Oregon guy or both, depending on what part of the country that you're selling it in, or out this way you've got a Notre Dame guy, down you've got an Alabama, whatever it happens to be, multiple covers. But I like this because it's got a little bit of everybody, so everyone's included in the first year. I think it's a really good cover, other than the fact that Colorado and Hunter is so prominent in this, because I do question that. They finished with a losing record. You should have the teams that actually went somewhere last year,
right,
is the most prominent spots. But speaking of the last names on the back, you did see so many of the last names on the backs of those players. Do you buy or sell that it's time for Notre Dame to add their names to the jerseys full time when you consider things like this and the NIL stuff that goes along with it?
Yeah, I believe that, this really, I don't feel strongly either way about this. Like, I wouldn't be mad one way or the other. I'm just going to give you the side that I lean towards more so right now. And I would say with, things like the NIL and getting the name, image, and likeness out there, I don't mind seeing the last names on the back of the uniforms. But then on the flip side, I understand the whole thing of, you're not playing for the name on the back. You're playing for, the team on the front or whatever, that whole thing. But I just think with where things have entered into this NIL era, it makes more sense to have last names on the jerseys so players can fully capitalize when they make a big moment. Everyone watching can say, oh, that's the linebacker, Drake Bowen, who just made a great tackle on that play, right? Because the common fan isn't going to be like, let me look up number 34 real quick on the roster and see who just made that tackle. So I think it benefits the players more in the NIL era to have their names on the uniforms.
I think so as well, and I think it would be just another step for Notre Dame to take to sort of signify that we're all in on NIL. Even though maybe there's some people who tried to use that against Notre Dame, it would allow Notre Dame to just a small gesture to say we are in on this. And when this game isn't going to be the only opportunity. There are other things, like where different companies sell the jerseys and those kind of things where players will be able to take advantage of that. And, the other aspect of this is college football, and two guys can wear the same number. And, I think just a small thing, there's less confusion on game day. If you actually have like Jeremiah Love wearing, I guess now Jeremiah actually switched numbers though, didn't he? So maybe that's a bad example. But you know what I'm saying? You've got a guy on offense and a guy on defense who are both wearing the same number, like Deion Colzie and Xavier Watts, for example. There are two prime examples. They both wear number 0. And every once in a while, you get a number confusion by the PA announcer or the TV announcer or whatever it happens to be. But if the spotter and the people on TV can actually see that it's Colzie and not Watts or vice versa, I think that makes it a little easier as well. But, look, Lou Holtz is the one who kind of started this when, because there was a stretch prior to Lou Holtz where they were wearing the names on the back. So it's not like it's completely unprecedented that, Notre Dame has worn names on the backs of the jerseys before. Lou Holtz flipped it. We are in a completely different era right now because we're talking about going on 40 years since that happened. And they do make the switch, like they do put the names on the backs for bowl games. So it's not like they don't do it at all right now. So I don't see any reason in the era that we're living in that Notre Dame shouldn't have the names on the backs of the jerseys. Fill in the blank. The full NFL schedule for the upcoming season will be announced on Wednesday, but we do have a couple of different matchups that are out there. Chiefs against Ravens in the NFL season opener is blank.
It's electric. It's exactly what I asked for probably a week or two ago when we posed the question of who we thought should the Chiefs face in the season opener on Thursday night. I didn't want a divisional opponent. I didn't want anyone from the NFC South, aka the Saints and the Buccaneers. Basically, you wanted it to be a quality game, but I don't think you should waste a divisional matchup in the very first game of the season. So
Concur.
I think it's a great balance of we get the AFC Championship rematch. It's going to be enough of a matchup that's going to draw everyone in, and I think you're going to see good football too. So I thought that they hit it right on the head, and it's the perfect matchup.
Yeah, I think it's great as well. I was thinking, I think one of my suggestions was maybe the Bengals. I kind of like that idea. The Chiefs are actually going to play the Bengals the following week. So, I mean, they're going to go boom, boom against AFC North, Ravens, and then Bengals week 1 and week 2. That is not an easy start to the season, but it's a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. So I love it from that aspect. It, it gives you a lot hanging on that week 1 game. And remember, as DK has pointed out before, they did host the Lions in week 1 last year. The Lions won that game in the season opener, who went on to win the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs, of course, did repeat. But this is a great week 1 right out of the chute, big primetime matchup. Chiefs, Ravens, Mahomes, and Jackson right out of the gates at Arrowhead Stadium. So I like it a lot. It's a great open to an NFL season. A couple of the biggest stars in the game. So next, same week, but a couple of days later, Cleveland Browns are going to host the Dallas Cowboys. 4:25 opening weekend kickoff. What's more significant, that it's Browns Cowboys or that it's going to be Tom Brady's first game as an NFL broadcaster with Fox?
Yeah, for selfish reasons, it's more important that it's Browns Cowboys, right? Because not only there's just so many good things going on with this being a week 1 game. One, the NFL season gets to open up in Cleveland. I'll get to watch my Cowboys play to open the season. And then second of all, I have all my friends texting me already, talking crap, getting ready about, oh, we going to the game. We got to go to the game. You know what I mean? It's just, to me, there's no better way to open the season than your favorite team coming to the city that you live in, and it gets to, kick off their season essentially, right? And I think the even cooler part is like the Browns never play 4:00 games. They are strictly a 1 p.m. game just about every week, right? The only time they play out of that time slot is if it's Monday night, Thursday night, or you know what I mean, some special game, right? That just your standard typical Sunday game is never at 4:00 in Cleveland. So I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. And again, for selfish reasons, I can't be more excited. The Cowboys are kicking off their season in Cleveland, and I get to be there.
And you are like a 10-minute train ride away from the stadium. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, the only disappointment is I can't wear that fabulous new Cowboys starter jacket that I got because it's going to be September 8th and it's going to be boiling outside. DK, I don't know if he's just trolling me, wanting me to say the name, asking who the Browns are opening against that next day. Joe asking if we're taking.
Well, now that it's going to be a 4:30 game, I think I have to.
Are you saying you can't keep yourself from getting tanked at a 4:30 in the afternoon game?
No, I'm just saying I would like to not worry about the consequences.
I hear you. The Cowboys typically open the season on a Sunday night, or like a few years ago,
against a divisional opponent.
Right, like they've more times than not, like last year, it was Philadelphia. They've played the Giants quite a bit on Sunday night. A few years ago, after the Bucks, they played those Thursday games against the Buccaneers to open the season. They've played those kind of games. So this is pretty rare, as you said, that the Browns aren't playing in a 1 o'clock window. They were a playoff team last year, so that does help them. But this is not just 425. The NFL wants all eyes on this game and Tom Brady, because this is Brady's broadcast debut. There's not going to be a CBS game, a national game in that window. This is going to be the only national game of that opening weekend in the 425 time slot. So the NFL wants everybody to be watching their GOAT in his broadcasting debut with the Cowboys and the Browns. So I think it's an even bigger deal that it's Tom Brady's debut. And Ryan and I were touching on this a little bit earlier. I think Brady has been prepping for this. They brought him to New York. It was him and Michael Strahan out there yesterday. If you saw a little bit of that video for the Fox upfronts where they made all these announcements, they announced some college football matchups that they're going to have as well. They announced the USC UConn women's game that they're going to broadcast on December 21st. So it's a big deal to Fox and to the NFL that Tom Brady is jumping in there and doing his first NFL game. So I think it's an even bigger deal that it's Tom Brady's first game in the NFL. So even if I'm at this game, I'm going to have to record it, come back and watch a little bit about that.
Yeah, see? Fred Benson bring facts here. The Browns do not play at 425. Like, this is a big deal. I just think that the Cowboys are in town. Tom Brady is in town. You're talking about two playoff teams from last year. Like, this is a really good, solid way to open up the season, and Cleveland is going to be buzzing. Like, it is going to be like for what it's worth, Cleveland fans, for as bad as they've been, for as long as they've been, some of the most loyal, rambunctious fans I've ever seen out there. Like, you would think that they're a playoff team, Super Bowl team every year.
Well, I don't disagree with that. The old Dog Pound, that was a place to be, Memorial Stadium. And don't they have like some kind of memorial down there from Memorial Stadium? Have you ever been down to that area?
That's a good question.
I know that was before your time.
I should know.
The question is, who's buying these tickets? And, I told your mom last night, I'm not sitting in the upper deck. Like, there were some fairly reasonable, and by reasonable, you're still going to have to spend at least $400 per ticket. But I want to know, where are these seats coming? We've got to move on these seats fast if it's going to happen. Like, are your buddies going along with this too? What's the whole setup with this going to be? We got to move on this.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Some moves need to be made because the tickets are only going to be increasing. This is funny. We will get to see how overrated Myles Garrett is. One of my buddies texted me last night and said, can't wait for Myles Garrett to line up across that rookie that you guys just drafted all game. And I was like, oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm worried that we're going to shell out a lot of money and go see like 18 points total scored.
Well, and that's the crappy part, right? Because it's like the season opener at the end of the day.
I know. But it's pretty exciting. We were wondering when it would be, so it turns out it's going to be September 8th. Cowboys at Cleveland. That's the same weekend Notre Dame hosts Northern Illinois the day before. So we're expecting an afternoon game for Notre Dame and Northern Illinois the day before Dallas and Cleveland in Cleveland. All right. I think that's it for today, right? That's all we have.
That's all we have.
All right. Well, appreciate you being here today, specifically Jesse. Thanks to Olivia Miles for joining us. Thanks to Ryan Roberts earlier in the show as well. Have a good one, and we will talk to you tomorrow. I believe Vince will be floating back in, if I've got the schedule right. So until then, we will talk to you then. Hit the like button before you leave. We do appreciate it. And of course, it helps us out. Subscribe, rate, review, listen to your podcasts. And we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.